I'd like to say, first of all, that it's really great to be here and to speak before an audience that is a lot more friendly than Amnesty International. I just want to start by clarifying what the object of Amnesty International is, and I'll read directly from their statute. The object of Amnesty International is to contribute to the observance throughout the world of human rights as set out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In pursuance of this object, and recognizing the obligation on each person to extend to others rights and freedoms equal to his or her own, Amnesty International adopts as its mandate to promote awareness of and adherence to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other internationally recognized human rights instruments, the values enshrined in them, and the indivisibility and interdependence of all human rights and freedoms. That is how the statute of Amnesty International opens. So I just want to stress that the business of Amnesty International is to encourage the adherence of the principles that are embodied in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other universal human rights instruments. Now, I've been a member of Amnesty International Bermuda for about 4 years. I wasn't a very active member initially, but let's say in 1996, I found myself on the board. I won't go into any details. And shortly after that, I found myself acting as chairperson. During that time, or shortly after that, which would have been April 1997, I was sent to the annual general meeting of the UK section of Amnesty, which was held in Belfast in 1997. It was at this AGM that I was exposed to the practice, or more details of the practice of female genital mutilation and Amnesty International's work in that area. It was during that time when I offered to be of assistance in what way I could that I was asked to write a resolution that would go in tandem with a resolution from the UK and a resolution from the Ivory Coast on increasing Amnesty International's work on female genital mutilation. And it was during that time that I innocently asked the question, what about the boys? And I was told very gently that whilst there are some parallels, first of all, what happened to the girls was more serious, and also I would be opening up a can of worms and coming up against a huge wall of opposition from the Jewish community and the Muslim community. So I went back to Bermuda, kind of I put it on the back burner. It was just a thought, and I had the intention of writing a resolution on female genital mutilation to be presented at our International Council meeting in South Africa the following year. It was during that time, going back to Bermuda, that something happened to me, and what happened to me, Lawrence, is the first, this article here came into my life. Time magazine, March 1998, a boy without a penis. This article came into my attention. I won't describe how. And after reading that, I was completely horrified that this sex change operation was performed on this boy, and that it was because of a circumcision that this all happened in the first place. And then I found out that phimosis, which was the reason given for performing the circumcision, was an unnecessary medical operation. So this child was, first of all, violated by being subjected to a non-medical procedure, and then was further violated by being castrated and deliberately changed into a girl, and culminating in a near suicide at puberty. And so, spontaneously, I decided that along with the resolution on FGM, I would also write a resolution to remove the sex distinction in Amnesty's work on genital mutilation. This is the I obviously didn't know what I was getting into, of course. This is the cover page. It's a two-page resolution, and you'll see it's entitled Resolution to Remove Sex Distinction from the Abuse of Genital Mutilation. I won't go through that, of course, but I would just like you to look at the concluding stanzas of the resolution, that the International Council meeting therefore resolves that Amnesty International affirms that there should be no distinction of sex in the upholding of international human rights standards, particularly in this instance relevant to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and concludes that the forced cutting away of any part of the genitals of infants, children, or adults, regardless of sex, is a violation of these universal human rights and freedoms, and decides that Amnesty International recognizes these indiscriminate rights and freedoms as indivisible, and affirms to provide its full support to bring an end to all forms of genital mutilation worldwide, regardless of sex, via promotional work, research, and human rights education, and inclusive of any future or concurrent allowances, for example, active campaigning, that may be further adopted by the mandate on this issue. So that was a resolution that was presented in South Africa in December of last year to the International Council meeting, which is the highest level of decision-making in Amnesty International. Now, what happened at that International Council meeting? We gave an hour-long workshop a few days prior to the presentation of this resolution to just try and give people information because it was a new subject. The room was absolutely mobbed with people. We were surprised. And we did present this paper here, which is called Bodily Integrity for Both, a proposal for the removal of sex/gender distinction from the human rights violation of genital mutilation. A few days later, we formally presented the resolution in the Working Party, and it was met with ridicule. There was a little bit of an uproar, actually, because I gave my presentation. The chairperson said she would take 2 speakers for the resolution, 2 speakers against the resolution. When she asked for speakers for the resolution, there was a bit of confusion and no one raised their hand. And then she asked for 2 speakers against the resolution, and the first section to raise their hand was Israel. The Israeli lady who spoke said that, well, none of the speakers actually addressed the issue of distinction of sex. She simply said she comes from a country where all the men are circumcised and that she considers this resolution a low priority. The next person to speak against the resolution was a French Canadian, and he simply said that Amnesty would become the laughing stock of the world if they took this issue on, and that he considered it to be a ridiculous resolution. There was dead silence in the room after that. No one seemed to know what to say, and a man from Colombia raised his hand, and he rebuked the remarks of the French Canadian and called for a formal apology from him to the meeting and for his remarks to be stricken from the record. After that, I was given the right of reply, and I basically told the organization that I was shocked that an organization that prides itself on upholding the human rights of all individuals regardless of distinction would, simply because the gender of the victim had changed, call a resolution ridiculous. And I told them that this resolution was not an argument that really needed to be voted upon. It was simply a principle that the organization need only affirm. However, the resolution was defeated by a large majority. 6 countries supported us, and they were almost all South American countries. And about 12 countries chose to abstain, and I'm pleased to say that the UK was one of them. And The rest voted against the resolution. However, right after that, when the meeting was over, because it was like 10 o'clock at night that we presented, several sections came up to me and said they were ashamed of what had occurred in the room. And so I commend them for that. I went on to make copies of this report and to distribute them to all the sections before we left. And I would just like to highlight, Lawrence, the clear premise of this report. I simply went to the World Health Organization and looked at their definition of female genital mutilation. And then what I did was simply remove the adjective female. So you'll see that in 1995, their definition was female genital mutilation comprises all procedures that involve partial or total removal of female external genitalia and or injury to the female genital organs for cultural or any other non-therapeutic reason. If you remove the word female, or the gender distinction, it simply reads, genital mutilation comprises all procedures that involve partial or total removal of external genitalia and or injury to the genital organs for cultural or any other non-therapeutic reason. 2 years later, something very interesting happened. In 1997, they published an updated definition in which they incorporated the word circumcision and the word religious. And so it then read, female genital mutilation, sometimes referred to as female circumcision, comprises all procedures involving partial or total removal of the external female genitalia or other injury to the female genital organs, whether for cultural, religious, or other non-therapeutic reasons. And again, if you simply take out the word female, you have a very clear definition of what genital mutilation is for either of the sexes. Genital mutilation, sometimes referred to as circumcision, comprises all procedures involving partial or total removal of the external genitalia or other injury to the genital organs, whether for cultural, religious, or other non-therapeutic reasons. You can skip that one. I just want to make something very clear here, because one of the things that gets batted around amongst the different fors and against is whether circumcision is indeed an injury. Can you just, go down about 5 or so. I'll tell you which one it is. And I'll just continue. The Convention on the Rights of the Child, and I'm going to finish very shortly, says that state parties shall take all appropriate legislative, administrative, social, and educational measures to protect the child from all forms of physical or mental violence, injury or abuse, neglect or negligent treatment, maltreatment or exploitation, including sexual abuse, while in the care of the parent, legal guardian, or any other person who has the care of the child. And I just want to say to you that from the international human rights standards, we've been talking about whether it's an injury or whether it's not an injury. I will tell you just very shortly that you can go to the source, to the medical documents themselves, and they will tell you that circumcision is an injury. There is an article in the American Family Physician which gives you the circumcision techniques, and I just want to say that the Mogan clamp, the Gomco clamp, the Plastival device are all in the literature. It says that they induce, crush, injury to the prepuce. And so it's in the medical literature itself that circumcision causes an injury. And the Convention on the Rights of the Child says that whether it's the legal guardian or the parent, that child abuse is causing an injury to the child. The session with Amnesty is still an ongoing session. We are contesting the vote as unconstitutional, and I have produced a report, the obligation of Amnesty International to recognize all forms of genital mutilation of males as human rights violations, and it's an ongoing process within the organization, but I am contesting the vote as an unconstitutional vote. Thank you very much.